Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I was looking at some statistics, and in 2023, which is the most recent data that's compiled, there was in the United States over 1 million abortions. Okay? And I found that to be astounding because we're talking about regime change war in Iran, right? We're hearing a lot of negative things about Iran, and America is being propped up as the sort of beacon of the world, like the goal for how your country should be. And so I've started really digging into even more into American culture, American rot, and I've spoken on it before because I'm starting to realize people are believing the propaganda of like the bald eagle falling into a wonderful scenery, and a cowboy races across the Arizona area. There's a lot of propaganda that frames America in a certain way, and if you criticize any aspect of America, you're told to leave. But then people will scapegoat immigrants for everything that happens in this country, and they're not looking at what citizens do and what the culture promotes. Okay, so when I was looking at 1 million abortions, I thought, that means 1 million women were so unsatisfied with motherhood and with the man they chose. So 1 million women chose to abort a man's seed. This shows that American women, by and large, are rejecting that man's seed. Now, that is intense when you think about it. What is wrong with American men to the point where a woman would say, it's better this child be deleted, yeeted, than to come to fruition? Now, I want you to think something. A woman has to sacrifice her body, and her body will permanently bear the marks of childbearing, regardless of plastic surgery. Even if she gets a tummy tuck, you'll still show the signs of a belly button that's been tummy tucked. Stretch marks, C-section scars. You're going to bear the marks, okay? And a woman has to suffer through all the different symptoms. Some women get more symptoms than others of pregnancy: carpal tunnel, nasal congestion. It's like an arthritis feeling in your knuckles and knees, swollen feet, backaches, hormonal swings, nausea. There's a lot that a woman goes through depending on her, situation. Okay? She has, and 9 months is a long road. It's fast, it's short, but it's long at the same time. And towards the end, a woman just feels so uncomfortable in her body. She's just like, ugh. And she has to go through hours of labor, and then postpartum depression, psychosis. And it's really hard on her, okay? And she's got to balance feeling safe and provided for with also trying to juggle, how do you get attractive again? How do you make sure this baby's okay? Sleep deprivation, other children to look after, financial stuff, healthcare, how much you're going to have to pay the damn hospital, and worrying about if your medical provider is going to treat you well. Are they going to do something that's malpractice that's going to hurt you and your baby? There's horror stories of birth trauma where women have discussed, I'd rather do home births than be at the hospital because of the way in which you're treated. And so what women have to sacrifice and go through for a man is a lot. And the fact that in the past, obviously there wasn't as industrialized abortion. But you could almost argue that the men of the past were more worth it. that the women fell more head over heels, that men were men and women were women, but things have really broken down. And so I see 1 million women who didn't appreciate fertility, but I also see and that they're cruel and mean and heartless, and why didn't they use birth control? Why didn't they pick better men? I mean, I could go on and on. But this also is the flip side of that, is that 1 million women felt that 1 million men were not worthy of having their genes spread. That's intense. Very intense. Now, the lowest abortion rate was in South Dakota. Okay? South Dakota. And the highest rate of abortion was in Florida. 2 red states. So 1 red state the lowest, 1 red state the highest. And it's pretty freaky when you look at how they're saying that there's a population decline, birth rate decline, but that there's record-breaking abortions. Okay? And, wow. You're like, there's 2 things that are going on. And so, if the citizens are aborting, blacks and whites abort the most in America. So if Latinos are coming and they're aborting less and they're having more children, obviously there's going to be more Latinos. And when you see the white supremacists talking about, white replacement, they often don't discuss how white liberal women reject white male seeds growing in the womb, we'll put it. So a government has to look at this and say, okay, our citizens don't want to have children, but the newcomers are coming in from sometimes worse off conditions, and they feel like this is plenty good infrastructure and environment in order to have children, so we're going to go ahead and allow them to come in. Because you can't maintain a military if you don't have bodies. And it's not like America can just have a bunch of robots right now. They're not at that level yet. And if people aren't having children, this is going to be intense for the country. Now, there's some feminist movements that are saying women shouldn't have children until conditions change. And I've researched some of those. And there's a lot of anti-natalist propaganda that's quite sinister and pernicious that says you're selfish if you want to have your own baby and you should adopt. And yet, they don't really look at how many of these adopted children are molested or worded, and how they suffer. And I've been listening more and more to blacks and Chinese and different Asians who get adopted by white families, and they have an identity crisis, and they feel like they don't have roots, and they're brought in from different countries. And during the Vietnam War, there was a lot of children who were taken from Vietnam and raised in America. There's a whole history of adoption as a whole, and the psychology that comes with it. And my brother, if you recall, my mom gave him up for adoption, and he contacted my mom and one of my sisters through Facebook back in the day, and he reestablished contact with us. He was curious to meet us and see who his parents were. Now, his dad is dead for the most part, but he was at least able to fly out and meet us. And that's a beautiful thing, but it just highlighted, even though he's half black, so even though he was raised by white Christians, he still wanted to see who his mom is. My mom obviously is half Cherokee because my real grandpa is 100% Cherokee. Okay? And he got to meet everyone except for me and my children, because I wasn't going to fly out. That's really expensive, to fly me, my husband, and our children out, pay for a hotel. That's too much money. But he is always welcome to come out to California, but I digress. Point is, adoption isn't harm-free. Is my point. And when you have antinatalists say that, you're evil, you're wicked, if for wanting your own baby, it just goes to show you how sick some people are and how they don't appreciate motherhood. Because when you're pregnant and you feel your baby move in your body, you suffered and bled to give birth to that baby. That is a serious spiritual bond that you can't just apply to someone else's kid. Now, you can have mercy towards the orphans. We have lots of hadiths about taking care of the orphans, right? And you can care about another kid as your own, but at the end of the day, they're not your blood. It's not your genetics. And you'll see countless adopted kids literally say to their parents when they get in their teenage phase, "You're not my dad, you're not my mom." And they rebel and throw that back in the adoptive parent's face. And you're also dealing with someone else's, like, when you have your kids, you can see some of you in them. Like, you'll see that they like some things you like and stuff like that. With the adopted kid, it's a riddle. You don't know what you're going to get. Personality disorders and health concerns, you don't know. And these can create problems. And also, if you have biological daughters, you have an adopted son, there's the risk also of them trying to commit stuff with your children. So it's not harm-free. And, we're going to get dark here. You adopt a daughter who's young, your husband knows that's not his real daughter, and she's blooming and blossoming and flowering. You have this young girl around your husband, or you have a young male around your wife that know they're not genetically related. This can create a fitna. So, adoption can be very noble, but we can also improve the foster care system, and we can also improve orphanages and create more sustainable solutions for children who have been rejected by their parents, while also supporting moms. Now, I've been researching the radical feminist philosophy, what they think about motherhood and whatnot. One of the things they mentioned was UBI, Universal Basic Income, and for housework, like housewives, if you have paid work, because they talk about unpaid labor. But at the same time, why should the government, the taxpayers, pay you for taking care of your own children? Why should they pay you for cleaning your own house, washing your own dishes, cooking your own meals? Yes, if you are wealthy, you're going to pay a private chef, you're going to have a maid, you're going to have a nanny. Those are jobs, right? But a housewife, a mother with her own children, why should the government pay her to take care of the children she decided to have? They would say that would boost motherhood and burst the nihilism around motherhood. But money doesn't just fall from the trees, and if you have to be paid in order to take care of your kids, that's a pretty bizarre mindset. Usually mothers sacrifice and put their kids before them, or like before their own selves, for themselves. So like I said, that creates a weird incentive, Pay me to take care of my own kids. That's pretty cold, I'd argue. And so, further, universal basic income, maybe that could work one day, but then what are you doing, Can the government come investigate? What, are you cooking quality food? Are you teaching your kids important educational things, spiritual things, or are they just watching something on their tablet while you smoke pot and you want to be paid for that? So you want to sit on your ass and do nothing for your kids and get paid the same as a mom who's cooking things from scratch, teaching kids skills, sewing, taking them hiking. Why would you have them be paid the same, even though one is raising a degenerate and the other one is raising an excellent citizen? That doesn't make really much sense, and you'd have to get the government even more involved in your life in order to qualify for UBI. Because we see already in government housing that some of these people, they still use drugs and drink and fornicate. They don't really appreciate an opportunity that's given to them, and those hoods are very dangerous. But then if you see someone who had to work and save, and they live in a nice community, they raise their children differently. You see so many, what I'm trying to get at is, you have to look at this woman who's demanding to be paid for house duties. You have to look at her and say, like, yeah, but what are you going to do with that money? And what are you doing with your time? And how do you verify that? Because the government shouldn't be giving money to someone who isn't going to be doing anything productive with that money and time. Because that's literally wasted resources. And so, the feminist, the RadFem in particular, solution to getting birth rates up, it doesn't really seem feasible to me at all. Because already we see people who get government programs, not all of them do well with their time or cook well. You know, there's so much free knowledge, but some people decide to stay ignorant, lazy, and apathetic and lethargic. It doesn't really work, you know. And there's a lot of online resources for women to talk to other women and get help to get them motivated. But I had also argued in the past that maybe we could use AI to matchmake people, to get them motivated in terms of, hey, here's this data profile, you two would match. You know, it can be used in that way, because you're seeing people on dating apps, not going out into the real world, and they're swiping and there's bots and it's all like too many scams, but like catfishing accounts. But if you have people have a digital ID into a database where they're mass collecting your information, you know, and then you have people who have studied relationships or something, or know how to utilize that data for matchmaking, match people up. That could be a solution to help people find a mate and stick with a mate. Because 1 million abortions, if you imagine those bodies piled up in one spot, that is dystopian. And that's not progress. That's not empowering. That just shows how far America has failed. And if 1 million women are so unhappy to have children, why won't America worry about fixing that instead of doing regime change war in Iran? Because clearly, men are not they're sleeping with women who will abort their kids. Or if you recall, in Fresh and Fit, that Walter guy, the black guy, I think they call him Fresh, I think. He got a Chinese escort pregnant, and he told her to abort it as if it was nothing, and he calls himself Christian. I remember that whole fiasco. I prayed for that baby. I was hoping she wouldn't abort it, but she did. And, you know, he's out there screwing other hookers, and I just found it so sad. Because if you recall, my mom was an escort stripper, and she didn't abort me, and I appreciate that. Because I'm glad I'm alive. I'm glad I'm alive. Come on. And she totally could have, because I ruined her career. I ruined her money making. And so, mercy is important for babies. So when I see this rhetoric around children, like calling them parasites, calling it a clump of cells, degrading the specialness of fertility, you can see how demonic America really is, you know, where the mother isn't valued, the woman's brain isn't as valued, but we're in the age of the harlot. And so harlots don't have much use for babies, because being a mom gets in the way of them making money, gets in the way of them using their body to get money from men in terms of sexual favors. And I try to post a lot of pro-mother stuff on my blog and on Instagram to motivate people, because some people, they feel like they can't be a mom, or it's just too hard or something. But there's going to be different stages, terrible twos, the not sleeping during the newborn phase. There's going to be the attitude of the teenage years. But overall, there's so much wonderfulness about it that you should still be motivated to try it. Now, food is another aspect. How many people can afford food? Now, conservatives are really into cutting food programs, which is really quite sad if you look at their record for wanting to cut food stamps and stuff like that. It's pretty heartless. But at the same time, you have conservatives warmongering, so they got money for war but not food for the poor. Make it make sense? Lots of money for is not real. Lots of money for Ukraine. Lots of money to go to war with Iran. But, giving people eggs, rice and beans, making more food banks? Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. It's a damn shame. So, don't think that your life is over just because you have a child, and try to really examine what's fulfilling for you. There's a lot of antinatalist propaganda, so take a moment and really think about what fulfills you, how precious life is, and your arrogant beauty is really from 18 to 30. After 30, it's all downhill for you from there, and a 35-year-old is just not as competitive as a 20-year-old. So, what would you rather have? Do you want to be like these childless Chelsea Handler ladies? Or do you want to be as skanky as Ali Wong? I don't think so. That's not good for your mental health. And remember, 1 in 5 Americans has an STD. Atlanta has a high rate of HIV/AIDS. There's a lot going on. So hookup culture isn't sustainable and it isn't good for you. So settling down and having a family and having mercy upon your womb and not aborting can actually make you have a better, more fulfilled life. And America shouldn't be doing regime change war in Iran if they can't even get women to not abort their kids, if they can't get the STD rates down. If you look at how many Americans are addicted to a drug, it's outstanding. It's like unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And college is important. Education is important. But remember that even if you can't afford college, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have kids. You'll see a lot of conservatives say, oh, stop breeding like rats. I've seen these comments, and I should start sharing them with you so you see it too. But they usually say this about Latinos. They'll say things like, oh, Maria, the illegal immigrant, keeps breeding like a rat, and my tax dollars are going towards her food stamps for all her and her bunch of kids. But then these people will say, we need more white babies because this is a white Christian country. So it's funny, they are complaining about birth rates, but they only want white babies born, not black babies born or brown babies. And they want to cut food stamps, which would help people to actually want to feel safe. Like that, they would help people feel safe. So there's a splitting where the left wing thinks that fertility is nothing special until they need IVF, and then they're like, please subsidize IVF so we can get pregnant. It's only a valued life if the woman wants it. And it's only a miracle of life and a blessing if you want it. Even though the woman always has control, for the most part, except for crimes, over who she opens for. And a woman can always say, don't finish inside me, use rubber, she can get her tubes tied, he could get a vasectomy, even though I don't recommend vasectomies. She could get on birth control. There's so much stuff. She can make better choices with her life. There's affordable and free birth control to prevent unwanted pregnancies, but you know, abortionists are making mad cash. And that's pretty sad that 1 million abortions have occurred and that the entire industry around disposing and processing of those corpses is a high one. And that's dystopian. And man, the divorce rates in America, single motherhood rates, how many people have multiple chronic diseases, how many people go into medical bankruptcy. I find it more and more bizarre that Americans think that they can just sit here and judge Iran, because, they don't let women walk around in bikinis, or do nude LGBT whatever parades and stuff like that. England, for example, I saw a report where there was like nude bicyclists, people riding on their bikes nude. It was like some type of event. So, Western societies value hedonism the most and intoxicant consumption the most. And I found this very odd. Very odd. So, in order to fix the abortion rate, we're going to have to really work on that. And, kids, they fuss, they whine, they want these toys, they want to play. Sometimes they won't eat their dinner, they are hyper, they won't sleep through the night. You get through it. And each kid has a different temperament. So, don't lose hope. And each kid's going to have a phase where they're really good and when they're really bad. And all of us were teeny tiny at one time and someone had to put up with us. That's just the way it works. And if you don't have kids, you're going to go to work, you're going to have annoying customers. So, you can't escape annoying people or stressful situations. So, if you feel like kids are annoying or too stressful, so you don't want to have them, pets can be stressful, customers can be stressful, there's a lot that can make stress on you. So, don't use the stress as an excuse not to have kids, because there'll be lots of funny moments as well. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, join the blog. Until next time.